Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is September the 26th in the year of our Lord 2023. And we're going to be once again, discussing the ways of Washington and, as always, trying to solve. Now, because our colleagues on the right are governing with closed fists and crossed arms, the immediate solution right now for us as Democrats is to rally more than ever to the voting booth come November 2024 in order to stop the madness that we thought that we had put a permanent stop to in the 2020 election. Democrats, we need to rally. I mean, you see what's going on here. You see what's going on. So once again, first and foremost, how do we solve it? How do we get to a point where we're back in the business of compromise? We're back in the business of give and take, while at the same time putting out sound legislation that benefits all of the American people and, represents a positivity or hope, if you will, towards the greater good of mankind. Now, we have the Republican debates coming up tomorrow. Debate number 2, primary debate number 2. And as before, the former president, even though he's by all polling indicators the leading vote getter for the nomination of the Republican Party, he's not showing up. Once again, he's not showing up to, put a message out there for the American people, even those who are on the fence. We know that, there's some diehard MAGAites who are going to, vote for the former president regardless. He can do no wrong. He can spur insurrections. He can lie on the oath. He can make, brazen phone calls telling election officials in states that he needs them to find votes. He may stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone, and his numbers won't change. We get it. We get it. But rest assured that if we show up, this stays in the minority. And, we thankfully live in a country where the majority rules. And so, we can only draw our own conclusions. If the former president is not going to show up to debate the issues, to make his case for why he would be good in the leadership role for this country we call the United States of America, won't even show up to make the case. So we can only draw our own conclusions. This is the same old MAGA rewrapped in a different package. It's like taking a gift and that you don't want, you rewrap it and you send it somewhere. This is regifting of MAGA. Nothing has changed. Nothing is new and improved. Nothing is refined, if you will, that will pretty much go along with American values as it relates to ethics in politics, integrity in politics. A grave threat to democracy, by, the accounts of some of the people that are Republicans in this country that was once in the former president's corner, are labeling it and being able to call it what it is. Now, our position here at Soluble has been for a long time that, the former president is a constitutional menace. And we're 247 years in. We can't help but to continue to reemphasize, what a young nation we are still, as it relates to, empires and the time that they've reigned in power throughout the world. We're only 247 years in. And democracy is at a very fragile state right now. It's at a very fragile state. Now, we know here at Soluble for a fact, unquestioned, that when we show up, and I'm talking to this 90-something plus percentile as it relates to African American vote in the Democratic Party. We know that when we show up, the result usually falls in the Democratic Party favor. And when you don't show up, we see what happens, to the contrary. So what are we going to do here? This is a grave threat to democracy. And who's to say that this so-called minority, this 92 something plus percentile, this 90 something plus percentile that keeps the Democratic Party in power, who's to say that we haven't been brought here to America at this point in time in history just for this moment to save democracy? This could be, if we show up, if we choose to show up and do the right thing, this could be the final curtain call for the pushback that we've always received when others in America have been threatened or feel the need to be threatened by our collective power. Have this 90 something plus percentile been threatening? No. Has this 90 something plus percentile plotted a coup or insurrection against the American government? No. But when we show up, as I said, we usually get, the result that falls in the Democratic favor. And there's always been a pushback or a so-called check on power when, certain racial groups in America feel as if, African Americans in this country are getting too much power. Now, at 247 years in, and we've had the first African American president in American history. And we thought that, the dust was beginning to settle when it came to, discrimination, biasness, inequality. That's what we begin to feel and begin to think that are we finally there? Now, the answer to that question is that, yes, we are there. But we have to hold this line. And we can solve this problem by showing up and getting the Republicans to see that we are a majority. We hold a powerful sway in Washington, D.C., and we have to work together in order to get things done for the betterment of all in the country. That's the only way you're going to get this reality. And, you have to look back on history and compare it to this moment. There's been a lot. There's been a lot of ups and downs. There's been a lot of struggle. There's been a lot of violence, if you will. And we're at a moment now, to my fellow Democrats and those independents who will, err on the side of common sense and protection for a strong and sound democracy. We're right there. We're right there, in a position now to be an end all, a cure all, if you will. But you can't get distracted. You can't get discouraged. And this is what's being counted on. I mean, we see it. We see it. We see it right here before our very eyes. Now, if you're really paying attention, if you look a lot, oftentimes you will see that what the Republican Party is saying that the Democratic Party is doing is actually what's happening in the Republican Party. When the Republicans make an accusation or make a remark about any Democratic candidate or whatever, it's actually happening in the Republican Party. For example, as I said, the perception is that the president is too old. He's too old. He's past his time. He needs to give it up. The reality is the president today, is on the picket line with the United Auto Workers. Does this point to any indication that the man is too old for the job? That he's not fit to serve? Okay, but now back to my point. As I said, if you're really paying attention, anytime that they come out and push against a Democratic candidate or a claim that they're making against the Democrats, it always come back for that same claim falling on the Republican side of the aisle. Now, as I said, the perception is that the president is too old and he's moved past it. You don't see no signs of this. I know, and we stated it here on Soluble. A bumbling and stumbling President Biden is better than a straight walking, crooked talking former President Trump. We don't know if the sandbag was placed there, intentionally to show up the president. We don't know, but this step that he made that caused him to trip over the sandbag, it was what it was. But we don't see this happening often. So we know that this was a misstep. The president had a fall and he got back up, as well as anyone in his age range could do and continue to do the job. Now, on the other hand, you see the distinguished senator from Kentucky, Senator McConnell. And this is what I mean by, the things that they come at Democratic candidates with major concern is happening in their own party. The president's too old. But you see Senator McConnell freezing up at the podium every 30 to 90 days. And, this is not to play politics with a situation where, the senator could have something going on that is cause for concern. Cause for the doctors to really take a serious look at and diagnose what the problem is. Any human being with a heart of compassion for fellow human beings would regardless of party affiliation, would look on this, with compassion towards the senator, with sympathy towards the senator. He is, by all accounts, trying to do a job, trying to serve in the United States Senate. But as I said, you see him freezing up. And we don't know what's going on. By comparison, you have the president stumbling over a sandbag, maybe missing a few steps going up or down Air Force One. But here you go. What's going on with Democrats is always coming back, in most cases, to the Republican. You see the president saying, I need you to find so many votes. But they say that dead people are voting on the Republican side. People are voting twice. They're throwing away ballots. They're stuffing ballot boxes. Then you turn around and you see live video footage of what's going on in Coffee County. You have unauthorized personnel inside an active polling or voting place. Unauthorized personnel. What are they doing there? What are they doing there? So let this further be a sign to, all of my fellow Democrats. Something is going on here. This is destiny at its finest calling. To try to get us to see that what's actually up when it comes to what we're being told is up by the Republican Party is actually down. And we don't have to wonder which way is up. We see it with our own eyes. And it will continue to happen. It could continue to happen. Now we're in a situation where, we're debating here. We're discussing what's going on currently in the halls of power and breaking it down to you, which, we sure that, our viewers have two eyes and a brain to discern for themselves at the same time. Now we're beginning to see even more pushback, on this so-called two-tier system. We have a distinguished senator from New Jersey, Senator Menendez. Cash laying around, in every closet, in every jacket pocket, in every closet. We have gold bars. We have luxury automobiles. And you have Democrats coming out on the record, unabashedly, unafraid, unwavering, calling on the senator to step down, to resign. The Justice Department is ready to prosecute. They're ready to move on it. But you won't see one of our Republican colleagues, from the right come out on the podium in a press conference and say, this is not a two-tier system after all. This is not a two-tier system after all. Because look what's going on with Senator Menendez. They're moving zealously, vigorously to prosecute if a crime has been committed. So there you have it. Now, once again, debunked. You have the senator, by all accounts, looking like something fishy is going on here. He explained away the cash, but what about the gold bars? What about the luxury vehicle? Here you have the senator fresh back from a trip to Egypt, Googling the value or the worth of a kilo, a gold bar weighing a kilo. Something's going on here. It doesn't pass the smell test. But what does, and we can rest assured as Democrats, is that he's going to be held accountable. And unlike our colleagues on the right, you have fellow senators, congressmen, congresswomen coming out for all the public to see and calling for Senator Robert Menendez to resign. Now, it's his constitutional right. It's his American right to fight it, to see it play out through the courts, and he's innocent until proven guilty, of course. But what evidence do we see of a two-tier system here? We see none. Now, we already knew that before these accusations came out against the senator, that there wasn't a two-tier system. As Democrats, we know this. We know that this is just something that the Republicans are trying to invent, trying to stir up to create, conflict and chaos in government because they don't have power right now. And so these are the lows that they'll stoop to. So these things are not just happening, out of sheer coincidence, just by happenstance. This is the everyday goings on in government, where sometimes, a politician does go rogue. He does, turn corrupt. He or she is sometimes not giving full disclosure on financial documents. And here in Democratic circles, we see the process playing out as it should. So should it help us sleep better at night? Yes. Should it give us more confidence in government? Yes. This is the Democratic way. This is the Democratic way. You're doing something unethical. You're doing something that's possibly against the law. Then it's time for you to step down. Now, on the other hand, our colleagues on the right, they're doing things that are, in violation of the Constitution, shady, corrupt dealings, and then they double down. It shouldn't be hard for us to realize, which party at this particular point in time cares and is concerned more about the country and the survival of democracy. So Democrats, we have to, once again, we have to put this dumpster fire of a candidacy out. Or, we don't know what the future holds for the country if we don't toe the line here. We don't understand where there's a flawed leader, totally unqualified, totally corrupt, incapable of telling the truth. But yet, he is, by all accounts, the leading candidate coming from the right. And so to have faith in democracy is to show up and vote. Now, we've held the line, on this pushback, on this check. And this is to all Democrats, independents, but especially that 90 something plus percentile in particular. This is a pushback on your power. And as I said, now you're at the table, you have seats at the table. You're governing, you're shot calling when it comes to policy. You're calling shots when it comes to the military, to the economy, to domestic affairs. Why would you do anything to the contrary? Why would you take that 90 something plus percentile and take, where else can you take it? We see what's going on in the Republican Party. When we have, civil unrest, these right-wing, alt-right groups are really turning up. By all accounts from the Justice Department, the FBI, the chatter is really turning up on social media. When you have something like what happened here, just a couple of weeks, almost a month or whatever, right here in the city of Jacksonville, where this hate crime shooting took place and 3 innocent lives were lost simply because they were of African American descent, simply because they were Negro. When you see what's happening in Buffalo, you don't see our colleagues from the right come out and champion the podium with the press conference to push back, to condemn these kind of actions, these kind of attacks. So you have a 90 something plus percentile working in your favor for the good of America and for the good of all Americans. So you simply have to continue to show up. You, especially considering the alternative. Here you have a former president 4 times indicted. 4 times indicted. Doubling down, all kind of attacks to undermine our institutions, to undermine government. But yet, he's the leader of the Republican Party, and he's vying for office once again. No time to panic. No need to panic. Is your voter registration up to par? Are you checking, to make sure that there is a precinct close to you? Is that your assigned precinct? Are you talking to friends, relatives, church members, family members about the importance of voting? Because believe it or not, like it or not, the republic itself, the country, as it exists as a democracy and the leader of the free world, is at stake here. It's at stake. Now, you would think that, you would see some of our colleagues on the right come out and play it down, and talk it down, walk it back, to be able to say, well, maybe we were a little premature in stating that, it was a 2-tier justice system. But nothing. So here we are. And it's pivotal. It's critical mass here now. At 247 years in, we can go either way. We can continue to go forward towards 248, 249, or we can, at this point in time in history, at 247 years in, watch as democracy is destroyed on our watch, simply by doing nothing. And you have to see how powerful the vote is. You have to see how powerful it is by, how upset Republicans are getting when we win And it's plain and simple. You won't hear it on any of the major cable networks. You will only hear it here at Soluble. And it's plain and simple. It's a pushback. It's a check on your power. Especially to that 90-something plus percentile. That's what it is, plain and simple. Now, we can either do one or two things. We can continue to rock the vote and, have major say-so in policy making, policy changes, laws that are written into legislation. Or, we can throw our hands up and discuss. This is what the Republican Party wants you to do. This is what they want to create so much confusion and chaos and so many hurdles and stumbling blocks on your way to your voting precinct that you give up, that you throw in the towel. And so at this pivotal moment in American history, Democrats, it's going to be up to us to save democracy. Now, the debates are happening tomorrow, as I stated earlier, and the one sound candidate that, we didn't come out on the record and publicly endorse, but, that we could get behind, that we could somewhat say, he would make a good Republican president. In showing that, even though we're staunch Democrats, if there is such a thing as a good and fit Republican that we think that we can trust as Democrats to lead the country until we beat him the next time around, that was Governor Asa Hutchinson. And, sadly, regrettably, he won't make the debate stage tomorrow for whatever lack of qualification that he didn't meet. He won't make the debate stage tomorrow. So, once again, or as always, since 2016, we're back to rogue right. Because this was the only one, who didn't sound like a Trump acolyte or crony, if you will. All of the rest of the remaining candidates who will be on the debate stage tomorrow, unlike the congressmen and senators now who are calling out Senator Menendez and calling for him to resign, these candidates that are on stage tomorrow, when it comes to the former president and how he's violated, how he's lied, how he's did everything to undermine, our sound institutions, how he's tried to, overthrow a system of checks and balances. They haven't come out and called for anything. So, that's where we're at. We have a party here where never before in American history have we seen, a candidate so flawed and so wrong on so many levels. And at the same time, the fellow members of his party are afraid to call him out. Now, is fear a good quality to have as a leader? I think not. This calls for a profile in courage. And we're getting anything but from our colleagues on the right who have, sat back and watched the president say degrading things, do degrading things, do all kind of things that are unpresidential, has shown he doesn't have the smarts, has shown that he can be, a blatant threat for democracy. And when they're asked, would you vote for the president if he was a nominee? They can't come out flat out and say, no, I could not. Governor Christie, maybe. But they just can't come out straight up and say, no, I will not. They're saying things like, well, the American people know better. He's not going to be the nominee. Well, what if he is? By all polling indicators right now, it looks like he will be. He's at 50-something plus percentage points in the poll. And the next leading contender, Governor DeSantis is way behind, 15, 20 plus, and falling fast. It's not like, the next closest contender is gaining. When we look at the polling numbers from day to day or week to week, it's not like he's gaining. So, in all likelihood, right now, the former president will be the nominee again. And so, we're going to look tomorrow to see who can call him out. One, for not showing up at the debates, to make the case as to why he should be president again. If they can call him out for the times when he was wrong, for the time he said things that were totally unbecoming of a president. We won't solve it. It'll continue to linger. The can will continue to be kicked down the road if we don't show up. It's just that plain and simple. If we don't show up to vote. Now, you have the president of the United States, as I said, the perception is that he's too old for the job. The reality is that he's out walking the picket lines today. Walking the picket lines. The most powerful man in the world. Now, we know that he has 40-something plus years of work in the Senate championing the middle class and the working voter. So it's not really a big surprise here. This is not for political points. This is who the president is. His body of work in the Senate alone reflects it. So, as far as being fit to serve, Democrats, we have to take care of our house, get our house in order and continue to keep it maintained, if you will. And right now, we have to circle the wagons around the president. Unless we as a party, and as a party trying to serve a nation, unless we rally around the president, our faith can easily be shaken by outside noise, by outside voices. And, this is what has happened constantly in the past, where, they just beat this, they just hammer away at the same narrative. They just hammer away and hammer away until, if you're not careful as a Democratic voter, you will start to, become convinced, or your mind will start to shift and wonder, maybe there is something here. There's nothing there. Joe Biden is president of the United States and the leader of the Democratic Party. This is our party. Right now, we are the majority. Why would we willfully give it away to lies, false propaganda, to a candidate who's leading on the right, who by all accounts, cares nothing about American government, a system of laws, a system of checks and balances? He's trying to undermine it at every turn. At every turn. Here you have, a former president who ran for re-election and lost. And because, he has such a fragile ego, he was willing to, turn democracy on his head for the sake of claiming a false victory that he would have been all too eager to claim had he succeeded with January the 6th. And this is one of the things that makes the former president most dangerous. Because, sometimes you're going to have a president of the United States who may lose on the debate stage to foreign leaders, who may get outmaneuvered on the world stage by a foreign leader. Now, the American way in that situation is to come back and make oneself better, and go back the second time around to represent the United States of America with nothing else but victory in mind. So it's very risque, and we've seen it's been exposed now. A president who can't deal with the fact that he lost a free and fair election is not someone, that we should want to have access to nuclear codes ever again. Ever again. Our guy, Joseph R. Biden, is doing the job to the best of his ability. To the best of his ability. And, whether we believe it or not, whether we want to accept it or not, we should let the president tell us what's in his heart, what's in his mind, and one can only ask himself, if you're going to be honest with yourself, and in your thoughts, and ask yourself the question, would President Biden continue to seek re-election, continue to want to be in office if he himself thought that, he couldn't serve effectively? And if you ask yourself that question and you know in your heart that the answer would be no, the president wouldn't continue to want to serve if he knew that he couldn't serve, then we should rest assured and let President Joseph R. Biden continue to be our guy until he says otherwise. Because here's a man who saved democracy. Here's a man who stepped up, when he could have easily been retired, no financial burdens, no outstanding financial debt that he needed to, re-engage in the workforce to pay off. Nothing of the sort. Who came out and for the sake of the nation. That's why he's in the Oval Office now. It's for the sake of the nation. He had pretty much, given up on the idea of ever being president of the United States of America. Has he ran for the office on more than one occasion? Of course. Of course. And each and every time that he ran, unlike the former President Trump, when, the numbers weren't there, he bowed out gracefully and continued to support the next leading candidate or whoever the nominee was going to be for the Democratic Party. That's the way it's always been. And now all of a sudden, here comes, former President Trump ruffling democracy's feathers in this way. And so, it's really important for us to hold the line. And this is going to make or break democracy. This is going to make or break democracy. And this is to my fellow Democrats. We've seen the former president already try to break democracy with January 6, 2021. So it would be very unpatriotic of us. It would be very unpatriotic of us to not show up in mass droves a second time around, to make sure that democracy is holy. The underpinning of democracy is firm for future generations. We owe it to them. We owe it to those who have come before us and those who will come after us to show up to defeat the former president a second time around. And now we hope this time he will bow out gracefully, because, we feel like here at Sawyer, but no one in their right mind would try to play the rigged card or the election was stolen card again. But, of course, this is the former President Trump. So nothing can be surprising. Nothing can be surprising. But we've seen, the foundations rocked. We've seen the foundations of democracy shaken, but they held firm. but they held firm. And so once more, you know, going into 2024, that 90 something plus percentile, putting it over the top once again. This should be the nail in the coffin for future pushback or any kind of pushback, that we could ever think would come from the future again. This should be the end all. Once we show up this time, you know, uh, we think that all of America could see that, okay, that's the end of an era. An era of what? Always having to have our power checked, pushed back upon. We watched an election stolen in the year 2000 with the hanging chairs and the butterfly ballots in the state of Florida. And Al Gore bowed out gracefully. Even though in his heart of hearts, and most Americans felt in their heart of hearts that there was something amiss in the state of Florida. So we have a chance now here, some 20 something plus years later, since the election of 2000, to finally put an end to it. And so no one can say now, especially, those who have been disillusioned or have lost patience or lost faith in this, election system that we have here in America. The argument of the debate about whether they're going to do what they want to do. My vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter if I do vote. This should be out the window now. And for all of us that watched the 2020 election and the things that came afterwards, where the election there was an attempt by the Republicans to overturn it. This should be firmly entrenched in your mind now, that as a matter of fact, they can't do whatever they want to do. Because the checks and balances that the framers and the founders wrote into the Constitution, it won't allow it. Because if it does happen, then America is no more. So, faith in the elections, as a cure-all, as an end-all, if you will, to first and foremost doubt that the system can work for you. First and foremost, ending all, belief that it doesn't matter, if you vote or not, they're going to do what they want to do. It's been proven that it can't be like that, that it's not like that. And so, Democrats, I can't help but to say it over and over again. We have a job to do. We have a job to do here. Now, once the debates happen tomorrow, this will be the second round of the debates. We here at Soluble, we're going to look at, the up and coming, third. We don't know if that's going to be the third and final debate, before the caucuses begin to start, next year. But we're going to have to come in an attempt to lay it all on the line to you, because oftentimes the everyday working man really doesn't understand how policy works. When politicians are saying certain things, like, for example, regulation is a job killer. It's a wet blanket on job growth. We're going to, begin to break all these things down, when it comes to the economy, crime, prescription drug prices, domestic policy, foreign policy, and give you our perspective here at Soluble, how it's governed or attempted to be governed from the left as it relates to what's good and bad about it for America, and how it attempts to be debated on the right and how it may be good and or bad for America. Now, former Governor Hutchinson of Arkansas, by all accounts, he won't be there tomorrow. Now, we don't know if he's gone. We don't know if he's eliminated. But we know he'll be a no-show tomorrow based on the qualifications. And he was, as far as integrity is concerned, as far as ethics and politics is concerned, as far as getting back to governing, trying to reach across the aisles for compromise. Governor Hutchinson was the man. Governor Hutchinson was the man. So, we'll watch the debates tomorrow, and, all the candidates who are there, we'll look close, we'll take a close look at the extremes. We'll take a close look at the positive, the negatives. But rest assured that the Republican Party has really strayed from its core principles and values, in the days of, a Ronald Reagan Republican. And that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. Because Reagan wasn't, a Democrat's idea of, the greatest president who ever lived. But the man was sane when it comes to politics. The man, was apologetic when he made a mistake. He didn't double down. He did his best to come clean with the American people. In times, or if he was wrong, in times if there was questions about his policy, he may have been misleading in the beginning. But at the end of the day, he came clean. You don't see that today. You don't see that. We have a front-running candidate whose specialty, when he's cornered, when he's caught red-handed, is to double down and say it's fake, it's rigged, it's a witch hunt. They're out to get me. And so, in addressing, my fellow Americans, Democrats in particular, and whatever independents that we have who are going to err on the side of common sense in politics, we're talking to you tonight here at Soluble. Get registered. Start to do your research now on polling locations, early drop box locations. We know that in the state of Texas, they removed them. They removed some of them. Reduce them all down to 1 or 2 to make you have to drive, tens to hundreds of miles possibly just to drop off a ballot. Now, as we stated, and this is where, it's up to Democrats to show up and stop it. The Republicans are doing almost any and everything they can to stop the vote, block the vote, make it harder to vote. But at the same time, they come out, unabashedly and say that the country is right of center at the end of the day. And so we have to push back as Democrats. We're going to encourage the president to go dark Brandon, from here on out, from now until the elections of 2024. He may as well go dark Brandon and once again be the savior for the nation. Because by all accounts, we have possibly, we're heading into a rematch. And we see the president's record. We see it is out there for all to see. The things that he's accomplishing, the things that he's trying to get done. Of course, there's work to do. Of course, there's work to do. Will we avoid a government shutdown here in 3 to 4 days? Or will, common sense prevail in the Republican Party and, we get a continuing resolution going here to pay America's bills and keep the government open? What kind of party is it that loves country? That wants to see, the United States remain the leader of the free world? That would even threaten this. That would even jeopardize this. And so, we need to get ready. And as a matter of fact, we need to stay ready. From 2016 to now, there's nothing new. And a lot of that is, owing to the fact that of these 7 candidates who are going to be on stage tomorrow, none of them have pushed back hard on the former president, with the exception of Governor Christie, which may be too little too late. Now, had they pushed back, in a hardcore, firm manner, in a matter-of-fact way, maybe their polling numbers would look better. But, the former president, in all his corruptions, in all his lies, is still, the leading nominee. So, opposition here at Soluble is, regrettably, is rightfully so, because even though the president is wrong, the former president is wrong in his approach and the way he looks at government, he is a strong candidate. He is the candidate with the backbone, albeit corrupt, albeit a pathological liar. So we can't, look down on that. We can't condemn that in any kind of way. I mean, to the strong man, I guess we have here going the spoils. And that is the former president, President Trump. So, it's not a daunting task. But democracy is rest assuredly at stake here. And, it's going to be up to us as voters, as Democratic voters, to come through once again. And we know here at Soluble this will go a long ways in solving the political stalemate, the political bickering that we see constantly going on in the halls of power today. We have a Democratic president in office, and the saying goes, if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. And we know that we're going to get pushback here from our Republican colleagues. That is Biden's economy doing this. That is Biden's economy doing that. And the truth be told, it's always a work in progress. You never see a president come in office and say, I have a 4-year term and I've done the job in 2. And so for these remaining 2 years, I will sit back and just cruise on cruise control. It's always a work in progress. It's always a work in progress. I mean, you have food prices not what we want them to be at the grocery store. In regards to, some fruits, some vegetables, what have you, milk, eggs. Now, the mighty Mississippi is not as mighty as it once was due to climate change, due to global warming. With that being said, it affects shipping supplies. It affects shipping channels. You have climate change going on as we see with all these weather disasters that we're having on a regular basis. It's affecting food crops. My point here, ladies and gentlemen, is that higher prices at the grocery store, higher prices at the pump is not something that is altogether in the president's control. Can the president order rain? Can the president command that it rains right now and replenish the mighty Mississippi to the point where, it's not drying up and ships can flow north and or south like they have in times past? No, he can't. So we can't look at, what's going on with food, high prices over here, the cost of living over there, and strictly say, this is on the president. Because these things are starting to be acts of nature. Climate change is affecting crops and how they are produced. what kind of yields that the farmers are getting at harvest time. Climate change is affecting it. And so it has a domino effect where right to your grocery store shelves. And, we already know which party is doing the most that they can to combat climate change. We already know this, plain and simple. But you won't hear our colleagues from the right when it comes to higher prices. You won't hear them say anything about the effects that the Mississippi River drying up is having on our food supply. The effects that climate change are having on farmers' ability to produce a fruitful yield at harvest time. That won't affect our grocery store prices. So there's a lot of things going on here that, it's easy to point the finger at the president of the United States. But there are things that are starting to face us as a country. In the name of climate change. It's not just affecting home prices, insurance for homes. It's not just affecting, the federal budget when it comes to FEMA, trying to take care of people who have been in these disaster areas. It's causing the insurance companies to flee. And it's affecting gas prices. It's affecting food prices. Climate change alone, ladies and gentlemen, are having a lot of effects on the prices that we're paying right now today. And as Democrats, we have to make sure that we put it out there. We have to make sure that we put it out there, because if not, our president will get unjustly attacked and unjustly blamed, for these high prices. And that's just one aspect of it. That's just one area. And as I said, here at Sawyer, we're gonna go, issue by issue that we know that concerns the American people. Anything from veterans, prescription drug prices, you name it. Regulation in the job market, regulations on Wall Street, prices at the pump, at the grocery store, foreign policy. We're going to break it all down. And to that 90-something plus percentile that votes with the Democratic Party, keep the faith. Keep the faith, because you have seats at the table in this party. Is that to say that, to the 90-something plus percentile, that the Democratic Party can save you, from any hurdles of racism, biasness in housing, biasness in the job market, police brutality? No, it's not to say that the Democratic Party can save you, but you have seats at the table in order to do what? Make policy changes and shape policy that makes these things go away, that levels the playing field. And this has been the sole reason for, January 6, 2021. It's a pushback on your power, because Republicans, if it's one thing that they can't stand, even though you will never hear them say it, but it's one thing that they can't stand, and that's equality for all Americans, a level playing field for all Americans, to have a fair shot in the job market if you're qualified at running for the Oval Office. We see Senator Scott. We see candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, former governor of South Carolina, Haley. So, stay tuned. Stay tuned. They're saying good things. They're championing the conservative cause. A strong military, a sound economy. Control spending. Tough on crime. These so-called minorities in the Republican Party are embracing and championing all of the things that Republicans stand for. So what's the problem? What is the problem? And, even though Vivek Ramaswamy sounds like, a baby Trump, our position here at Soluble is that right now he's more qualified than the former president. because it remains to be seen yet that if he was in the Oval Office, would he conform to the presidential standards? Would he perform at the norms that we have come to respect from a president of the United States? And we believe here at Soluble the answer to that question concerning candidate Ramaswamy is yes. So you have three so-called minorities here in the Republican Party that are more qualified for the Oval Office than the former president. Stay tuned. The debates start tomorrow. And we'll be sitting on the edge of our seats, eagerly listening. Can there be, a savior? Can there be a sudden epiphany, if you will? A come to Jesus moment, if you will, with our colleagues on the right who are vying for the Oval Office, that we here at Soluble can say, Governor Hutchinson is no longer in the running, but we see a solid number 2 now. It remains to be seen. So stay tuned. Our goal here at Soluble, as always, is to try and solve. Try to bring clarity to the American voter who may be confused. But it's one thing that we know for sure, that as Democrats, we have to control our own party, our own agenda. We have to make sure that our house is in order. And right now, our house is not out of order. It's not out of order because, as I said, everything that the Republican Party tries to push off on the left as bad, or that the left is doing that is bad, it always comes back. The same thing is right there with them. From the examples I just gave you. Nobody on the left, is enjoying, these episodes that Senator McConnell is having at the podium. No one is enjoying this. But what we do expect, and what we should expect for our colleagues on the right to do, is to call it like, it's being seen. It's actually being seen with all American eyes, everyone who is watching. To call it like, it is actually being seen. Now, that's not to say that, we here on the left should call for Senator McConnell to step down. That's not, what we're here for. What we're trying to say here at Soluble is that don't walk in hypocrisy. And that's what, both parties have a tendency to do it. Both parties have, engaged in hypocritical behavior or policy making. And we'll call it as we see it. But we're especially asking our Republican colleagues on the right, because they're so vehement with it. They're so vocal with it in order to brainwash or change the minds of voters who might be on the fence. So when it's happening in your own party, man up. Have that come to Jesus moment to be able to level with the American people and say, well, it's happening in both parties. When we have politicians who have, possibly reached the end of the road as far as their careers are concerned. But Democrats, make no mistake about it. We can't make this a tit for tat affair. Where they say, our guy's too old, and now we're looking for someone on the right to point the finger at to say, well, he's too old also. It's not our game to play. This is the Republicans' playbook. You see what the president is doing right now. He's going about his business of going out and making the case for Bidenomics, for what he's trying to do for the greater good of the American people. The president just last week, opened up an office dealing with gun violence prevention, gun safety in America. Opened up a new office of government. What more can you ask for? The crisis at the southern border. The president has reached out to the president of Mexico, possibly Guatemala, to stop it on their end before they reach the border between America and Mexico. That's what, a sound-minded, intelligent president will do in order to protect this nation. So, we hear a lot of noise coming from the right. The border's a mess. Bidenomics is bankrupting Americans. But the facts of the matter are not being accurately articulated by our colleagues at the right. This is a party that, sees the president as one who can do no right. Even when he's doing good, he can do no right. And this is how polarized we have become as a country. And the leaders that we're sending to Washington, D.C. So can it be solved? Is it time for despair? Is it time to, fear? Walk in fear? No. It's time to become more engaged now. If the Republicans are going to double down with the former president, Donald John Trump, then we have to double down and get the vote out once again. For the least of all things, to save American democracy. Because we know by his actions alone. This is not by something that we read in the paper or a tabloid magazine at the grocery store checkout counter. These are things that we're seeing every day with our own eyes. That the former president is doing everything he can to undermine, to regain power. And he'll stop at nothing to get there. So as Democrats, we have to stop at nothing to get our message out and why it's better for the American people and mankind in general. And be forceful, in our vocal. Be forceful in our message. Put the facts out there plainly for the American people to see. And so the struggle continues. And I use that word, the struggle, for lack of a better word. Because it doesn't have to be a struggle as long as we show up at the ballot box. And to that 90-something plus percentile, that has walked in lockstep with the Democratic Party, this is not to make the case that the Democratic Party is your saving grace. But, we say it over and over again, you get seats at the table. And we're going to break it down to you for all clarity's sake. Southern Baptists, Christian evangelicals, Christian conservatives, economic policy, the whole 9 yards. We're going to give it to you from a right and left perspective. And then, this makes it easier for you to decide, as to where you stand on the issues. The president has, championed the middle class. He has, unequivocally backed the working man. He knows that the American economy works best when it's built from the middle class out. And you see him today walking the picket line. This is not a stunt. This is not a front. This is an embodiment of the 40 years of service that the president put into his time as a U.S. Senator. And, he stands firm in what he believes. And so until he says otherwise, or until we as a party decides, as a party, until we decide otherwise, right now, President Joseph R. Biden is our man. And, we wouldn't have to say that he's the last best hope for democracy if, there was possibly here another candidate that was leading in the Republican Party. But here we have the same threat rearing its head again. How can this be? How can this be? We'll break it down to you and give you revelation and more revelation as time goes on leading up to the 2024 elections. So until then, we're going to sit back and we're going to watch the show tomorrow. We have the second Republican debate. We're going to be listening closely to their stance on all the issues and prepare to come to you again after this second debate and put it out there from a perspective of right-wing government and a perspective of left-wing government. So until then, this is Soluble signing off. We thank you for joining us tonight. As always, we come on to solve. We come on to try to, do our best attempt to hold politicians accountable and inform the voters and make the case that the Democratic Party right now is the last best hope for American politics. So until we meet again, keep the faith, stay vigilant, stay aware, know what side of the issue that you're deciding to fall on, know the issues well, inside and out, so you can make an informed decision. And we here at Soluble will continue to put out the facts as they present themselves in order to help aid in that decision making. Because at the end of the day, what we're championing is a solution to a political stalemate, that we can get back to the business of legislating and governing on behalf of the American people, that makes one, life better for all of us as American people, and two, gives each and every one of us, regardless of race, creed, or color, a shot at the American dream, a fair shot at the American dream. So we'll tune into the debates. We encourage you to watch also, and we look forward to holding future podcasts with you after this debate to articulate, point out all the issues, policies, and how they work positively and or negatively for the American people, whether it's coming from a position of right-wing politics or left-wing. So until we meet again, this is Soluble signing off, saying good night, God bless, and God bless America. Thank you for joining us.